Once off-road racing was really rocking, the big boys decided to join the party. The first one to make it to the dance was Ford. The next time you go to an off-road race, look around you. Check out all the trucks. You're going to see an awful lot of blue. Ford blue. Off-road racing isn't just about pickup trucks, but of all the specialized machines that take the green flag on race day, trucks look the most like something a fan would walk into the showroom and buy. Because of this, off-roading and Ford are natural partners. Off-roading is racing, and the old saying applies that when you win on Sunday, you sell on Monday. There's another part of this whole thing. Ford and people who drive them just can't pass up a good race. Ford is a car company with racing in its blood and fighting in its spirit. When Ford first met off-road racing, the collision rocked the planet. Ford has been building tough trucks almost as long as they've been building fast cars. And today, they're the biggest factory player in off-road racing. From yesterday's mostly stock pickups and Broncos to today's high-tech Thunder machines, Ford has a bigger presence and provides more racer support than any other car company. But as much as Ford loves a good race, they're not in this just to get out there and mix it up with the Chevys and Toyotas. Ford looks at the desert and sees the world's greatest research and development facility. To others, the Baja might look like a 1,000-mile torture chamber. To Ford's truck engineers, it's a graduate course in how to build a tougher truck.
Ford's been supporting off-road racing as long as I can remember. Ford is thrilled by the concept of what Ford Tough means. It means something a little bit different to everyone, and we try to protect that heritage.
Today's off-road super teams choose Ford by a margin of 5-1 over the next most popular hardware. Ford's racing support is a big part of this decision.
Working with Ford is great, and with their engineering team, and they're always on the ball there and getting us parts and getting us information and really helping us out.
It's not just the super tough chassis and suspension components Ford puts under its vehicles that causes so many racers to run the blue oval. Ford has a whole menu of high-output engines that run on the red line all day and still have enough left over at the end of the race to take you home.
This motor we have is, I think it's about 2.5 years old now, and all we do is change the fluids in it every race, and we don't touch it. So that's nice.
Off-road racing brutalizes every part of a car. Truck, buggy, bike, or anything that takes the green flag. Sudden bursts of speed of up to 140 miles per hour, followed by low gear pulls in deep sand, make an engine work harder in this kind of racing than in any other. If your motor can do 1,000 miles here, it'll probably do 100,000 miles of daily driving. There's another big reason why racers love to race Fords: money. Ford supports the racers where it counts the most, with contingency payments that puts cash right into their pockets. Like they say, going fast costs money.
They'll pay out a lot more money for winning the award or winning the first place, maybe second place, than maybe another manufacturer would pay. So it actually promotes a lot of people to race the Fords.
if I win, this is worth $7,500 to me.
But at the bottom line, the reason so many people race Fords is they want to win. And they figure they've got the best chance to come in first when they're driving one of those tough Ford trucks.
Mark and I are racers. We want to win. You know, we want the biggest, the best, the baddest.
Today, you see Fords in every kind of starting grid, from sporty cars to stock cars to straight-line drag racing. But Ford is the kind of car company that's always had a dog in every hunt. To find out how we got here, we'll have to take a look back to the days when just about every car on the road was a Ford. When off-road A to Z continues. Off-road racing in America is a fairly new phenomenon, just a little over 30 years old. But automobile racing has been around since there were cars, and roads wide enough for one car to pass another. Now, it might sound a little arrogant to suggest that Fords were the cars Americans first took to the races, but you have to consider two important facts. First, there were a lot more Fords out there than any other car. Second, and most important, those little hot rods from Dearborn were pretty fast. After World War II, this racing thing really heated up in the good old USA. People who wanted to race found out that they could build a really nice race car out of just about any old Ford. The reason was simple. While just about everyone else was running flathead sixes, Ford had a V8. Having everyone else totally covered in the horsepower department went a long way towards making Ford America's favorite race car. But by the mid-50s, the other car makers had caught up with Ford, and the lid was about to blow off on the horsepower war that would last for the next 15 years. By the end of the 60s, Ford was axle deep into every kind of racing there was. Fords had won Indianapolis, they'd won Le Mans, and they absolutely owned the NASCAR tracks, from Daytona to Darlington. During the past 20 years, Ford had created a whole catalog of bulletproof racing parts and go-fast technology, just in time to take all this stuff into the dirt. The first off-road truck racers discovered that screaming by a little VW Bug in a big old pickup truck was a total blast. They also found out right away that Ford trucks could take this kind of beating.
For the Fords in the early days, with the I-beam suspension and so on, some of the strongest trucks built. A lot of people would race those vehicles without a lot of modifications.
Some of the earliest off-road race trucks were amazingly close to showroom stock. The racers used the heaviest duty parts they could find, along with all the rulebook required safety equipment, like window nets, racing seats, 5-point harness, and a full-on roll cage. Beyond that, it was up to the racers to create whatever they needed to make it to the finish line.
Unfortunately, in those days, you couldn't go to Pep Boys and buy the parts, or J.C. Whitney. Technology in off-road racing has come a long ways from the early days.
As off-road racing gained speed, it also attracted a lot of other kinds of race vehicles. Joining motorcycles, Volkswagens, and buggies out in the dirt, Jeeps started showing up, along with Ford's first sport utility vehicle, the Bronco.
This was a very exciting car to drive, yes. You know, you learn how to bounce on two wheels a lot. You learn how to kind of run through the kick when it goes up in the air. And it was, but in its day, it didn't make a difference because all the cars were like that, right? I mean, they didn't have this trick suspension today, but one thing unique about this car was the fact that, if I remember right, in 1969, there was no power steering on this car. So Larry Miner and myself would have to take turns driving this car about every 200 miles just because you would wear yourself out.
Things were getting more specialized, but the sport was still in its infancy. The races were long and parts were not quite bulletproof, at least not yet.
They used to actually take shocks off during the middle of the race and replace the shocks because they would actually heat up so bad they would actually fade away. That was the early days of off-road racing. Nowadays, they make high-tech shocks that are incredible. Shocks can outlast, they'll last a 1,000-mile course, no problem.
All this R&D made off-road racing into more than just a weekend activity for a few nutty dirt racers. The technology developed by these racers created hot competition, and that drew thousands of fans, and that created an industry. It wasn't long before the big guys in Dearborn started noticing how many people were going off-road racing and deciding they wanted some of this action. Stay with us. When we come back, we're going big time on Off-Road A to Z. Ford has always built toughness into everything they made. Ford cars and trucks did everything, from pulling heavy loads to hauling livestock, and their frames and suspensions were close to indestructible. By the mid-70s, off-road racing was going hammered down, and Ford was the first car maker to show up at the races. This would give them a huge lead in off-road racing over the other manufacturers. At this point, though, off-road racing was still developing into the high-tech game it is today.
There have been some very strong off-road vehicles that Ford's built, raced by off-road names that are really famous. You know, Parnelli Jones and some of the people that are thought of in pavement racing really started racing off-road. There was some people starting to race across the desert and do strange things with trucks, and we started to recognize it as an opportunity to test some production parts and vehicles.
For the car companies, off-roading brought a whole new set of problems. Going like a bat over this kind of terrain called for strength in every area of the vehicle, from transmissions to lug nuts. Very soon, the Ford guys found out that racing in the desert can take anything apart. Fords were tough trucks, for sure, but it was racing ingenuity that kept them alive in this environment.
There are really several places that Ford benefits from racing off-road. First is it gets us a place to test new technology. Second one is a good place to test parts and people. We can bring out engineers and they can be firsthand exposed to the racing environment. The third is we get some great marketing. People get to watch the race, see the Fords win, and we like it when they do that.
As off-road racing gained popularity through the 80s and 90s, every year the competition got faster. Parts got a little bit more expensive, and the whole thing got a little more tricky. Today's off-road racing is so high-tech. Even trucks running in the stock classes are some super high-tech pieces, but they're still pretty close to being showroom stock.
Well, this class is based on a stock production vehicle. Really, you can't modify your frame or your body panels or your suspension members. It's all stock as delivered from the manufacturer. And so we're really limited in regards to any modifications we can make. So it really showcases the strength of the stock components.
But you need more than just a tough chassis if you want to finish an off-road race. You need a heavy-breathing, stump-pulling bad boy under the hood. Off-road racing is a delicate balance between going as fast as you can and keeping your machinery alive until the end of the race. Pedal to the metal may be how you win in other forms of racing, but around here, that won't always get you to the finish line.
It's really about reliability, not about your motor. When you get a bigger motor, it's only going to get you to the ditch that puts you out faster.
In this kind of racing, you need torque. Great big gobs of it. RPMs are nice, but torque is the stuff that'll pull you out of the sand pit.
The Fords, we run a lot bigger cubic inch than the Chevy we did, so the torque range is just phenomenal. This motor, I believe it puts out about 820 horsepower, but the RPM, the max torque is down around 4,000 RPM. You know, so you can go through the gears. You don't have to rev it up to 7. You know, the chip in this one is about 7,500, which it gets up there in between gears, but man, it loves to run about 4,500 RPM.
Think of an off-road race as one 500-mile-long uphill pull. And you'll begin to get some idea of what your engine goes through on race day. 10 hours of this torture really separates the players from the watchers.
You'll be running and see the transmission temperatures up around 300 degrees, and you know, my co-driver's saying, just don't worry about it, it'll be all right. I mean, there's times that we go through silt beds that the silt's going over the hood and hitting us like water. I can't even see the guy beside me, and we're still going 80 miles an hour.
Some off-road race classes allow the competitors to go completely over the top. With tube chassis, NASCAR-style race engines, and ultra-trick running gear, the name of the game in these classes is Go big or stay at home.
Okay, the class that we're in is called 1400, which is, they call it trick truck, which is there's absolutely no rules. It's as awesome as you want to go. The only rule is it has to look somewhat like a truck, but you can put 3 motors in it, 5 motors. There's no suspension rules. There's nothing. It's the cream of the crop. It's as fast as you think you can go, and as much money as you want to spend.
When we come back, we'll talk trucks, driving techniques, and lots of other racing stuff with the guys who build tough trucks and the guys who race them on Off-Road A to Z. Off-road racing is a real run-what-you-brung sport. Over 30 classes of racing vehicles compete in every race, but by far, the fans' favorites are the trucks. The most powerful vehicles in off-road racing are these, the trophy trucks. These are unlimited production two-wheel drive trucks, and they are some of the most over-the-top race cars on planet Earth. There's nothing stock about them, from their carbon fiber and fiberglass bodies, to their 700 horsepower engines, to their mountain goat suspensions. A race in one of these is a genuine e-ticket ride.
Road court, road, you see that corner every time you come around. Off-road, you go from here to Reno, and you don't see that corner again. You only saw it one time. If you blew it, you don't get to do it again. It's the, spontaneous, oh my gosh, that's a deep hole, and you're doing 120 miles an hour.
The trophy trucks might look fairly stock from 50 feet away, but the closer you get, the more you realize this is one bad boy pickup. Nobody's going to be bringing home groceries in this thing. A new class of racing trucks has doubled the excitement these days. They're called Pro Trucks, and they combine all the flash and dash of the trophy trucks with more of a stock appearing profile. They're also driven by some of the biggest names in the sport.
We've been racing a long time, so we're pretty used to it, and just try to stay calm is the main thing. You get that old adrenaline going when you take out of here, and that's where everyone makes all the mistakes. So the main thing is keeping yourself calm and concentrated on, just driving and nothing else.
With the massive popularity of the smaller mini trucks these days, the Class 7 trucks really attract a lot of attention. And don't think because they're smaller, they're slower. These little haulers go toe-to-toe with anything out there.
This is a Class 7. It's a what they call the mini truck. This particular truck is a Ford Ranger. Our class mandates either a 4-cylinder or a V6. We choose the V6. The particular motor in this truck here is a version that Ford produced for NASCAR back in the early days when NASCAR mandated their Busch Series to run a V6. It's a very heavy-duty block. It's 6-cylinder block. It's got 4-bolt mains. We run what they call a dry sump oil system. It has special cylinder heads. It's got aluminum heads, what they call a wedge head. The intake manifold actually is, this motor is almost all Ford. It's the cylinder heads, the block, the valve covers, the water pump. Everything about it was designed for NASCAR, so it works very well. We use a Holley carburetor, which is 750 CFM, but it's highly modified for this class. It runs headers. We run an automatic transmission. We make just around 480 horsepower on the V6. We have a little over 410 foot-pounds of torque. It's got a lot of the high-tech stuff that the average, enthusiast doesn't really understand. All the, the billet crankshaft and titanium rods, but that's what it makes it run and live very well. Just like racing NASCAR, when they do the NASCAR 500-mile race, well, we're doing a 500-mile race. The difference is we're in the dirt, they're on asphalt.
No matter how unbreakable you think your parts are, though, off-road racing is still the toughest proving ground there is. Racers have to take extraordinary measures to keep their stuff together in the heat, dirt, and punishment of a desert race. Heavy-duty radiators mounted in places where rocks can't get to them. High-capacity oiling systems. And super-efficient filters to keep the dirt on the outside are just some of the tricks that off-road racers have developed to keep everything together throughout the race.
So we opt for the radiator in the front of the car for the aerodynamics. A lot of the trophy trucks put the radiators in the back, which catches the air when you're going fast. This car, we wanted the air to go all the way through it, which really, really helps on the stability of the car on real fast graded roads. This car will do about 145 miles an hour in the dirt, and stability is a very important thing to me as a driver.
Stock classes are where you really see the factory hardware being put to the test. Here's where the race team's experience gives them an edge over those who haven't been there. The smart companies listen to their race teams. Ford is one of the smart companies.
We've done some stuff with Ford Motor Company ourselves on like the floorboard, the flexing of the floorboard. They're always looking to us for the future. I mean, what we race, they still take a lot of that technology and carry it into what they build as a production automobile.
What we can do in a day of just racing it flat out is about a couple of months of test time for them. So we can take a tie rod assembly and bring it back and put it on the shelf and say, here you go, take a look at this. And it simulates quite a few thousand miles compared to the short amount of time that we do it in.
Sure, it used to be all about winning on Sunday and selling on Monday. But these days, consumers are a little bit smarter, and so are the car companies. The investment they make in racing is huge, and they expect a return on that investment. The biggest return they get is all the data that helps them make stronger, safer vehicles.
This car here is not, all handmade. It's a production vehicle that we've done some safety equipment to, and we take it out here and beat it to death.
At the bottom line, who benefits from all this sweat and labor is us. The next time you're in a showroom, looking at all the new trucks and SUVs with all their beautiful styling and plush interiors, take a look underneath or under the hood. That's where off-road racing has made an impact. So the next time you're at an off-road race, check it out. There's someone there wearing a Ford Blue Oval and taking notes. And you thought all this was just about fun and games, did you? Thanks for watching. See you next time on Off-Road A to Z. Until then, go play in the dirt.